Welcome to Flyline Podcast, where we enjoy the interesting stories behind the legendary guides and luminaries connected to Maine fishing. I'm Michael Jones. Our special guests today are the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, Judy Camuso, and our Governor of the state of Maine, Janet Mills. Judy Camuso was nominated to serve as Commissioner of the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife by Governor Mills and is the first woman to lead the department, overseeing the preservation, protection, and enhancement of the inland fisheries and wildlife resources of the state. Judy was the Director of the Wildlife Division for IF&W since 2013 and has been with the department since 2007. As Director, she oversaw the development and implementation of policy decisions, legislative proposals, and rules related to the Wildlife Division, and coordinated a budget of $12 million to manage Maine's wildlife and was the department's voice on all matters regarding Maine's wildlife. Commissioner Camuso has over 20 years' experience with the department and also Maine Audubon, and has led several statewide natural resource initiatives as Wildlife Director for IF&W. She began her career in the department as an assistant regional wildlife biologist in southern Maine, then advanced to the Special Projects Coordinator for the department before being promoted to Wildlife Division Director. Her department is charged with the protection and management of fish, non-game wildlife, and habitats, as well as restoration of endangered species, like the bald eagle. The agency's constituents include the fish, wildlife, and people who call Maine home, as well as visiting outdoor enthusiasts and ecotourists who visit Maine and contribute hundreds of millions of dollars each year to the state's economy. In 2018, Camuso was named one of Maine Magazine's 50 Mainers of Maine, and in 2015, she received IF&W's Employee of the Year Governor's Award. She is a licensed bird bander and an avid birder, as well as a hunter who canoes, hikes, and bikes. Governor Janet Mills has many firsts in her decorated professional and political career. Janet was the first woman district attorney in New England, the first and still only woman Maine Attorney General, and Maine's first woman governor, having been recently re-elected with more votes than any governor in Maine history. In my life, I have witnessed Janet perform and serve as an inspiration and ardent voice for the people of Farmington, Franklin County, and the state of Maine through her vision, leadership, and guidance. People that know Janet admire her for her compassion, empathy, and ability to make real and deep connections that improve the lives of the people that she touches, my own included. Janet enjoys activities such as tennis, hiking, boating, and of course, fly fishing. She met her late husband Stan when she signed up for a tennis lesson, and Stan was the instructor. Janet and Stan lived in a gorgeous farm on the South Strong Road in Franklin County and had riverfront on the Sandy River, where they could readily fish from their own property with fly rods in hand. We have a lot to talk about. I want to take the opportunity to introduce the Flyline Podcast audience to our Commissioner of IF&W, Judy Camuso, and our Governor, Janet Mills. Judy and Janet, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for visiting the State House and coming to talk to Judy and me. It's a pleasure to talk about something other than budgets and new laws and regulations, and because we both enjoy the outdoors, and so do most of my cabinet and my staff as well. We've had some interesting excursions together. It's a cabinet and staff who feel like family to me, and we love being in the outdoors.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm really happy to be here and be able to share some of our experiences and vision and great work that we're doing.
Yeah, you are doing great work. And, the ideas we were talking about earlier is not to talk about budgets like Janet said, but to talk about the things that make our heart go pitter-pat. And so just feel free to share and open up about any stories that we have to share. But I do want to take the opportunity to recognize the great accomplishment that you've taken on, Judy, with becoming the first woman commissioner for Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. And my family, I come from Master Maine Guides, 2 generations, and I spent a lot of time in the building that you work in, testing guides, working with the guides, in association, whatnot. But I remember there was a lot of discussion about you being the right person to narrow the gap between the hunting and fishing community and folks that would self-describe as naturalists or non-consumptive conservationists. How's that experience gone?
You mean birders and hikers?
Yeah, that's what I do mean. Yeah. Narrow the gaps. How's that gone?
I mean, I think it's great. I've never seen the significant divide. I've always seen the two groups as closely aligned. Mm-hmm. And, as an avid birder and somebody who hunts and fishes, for me, those two worlds overlap, like, 2/3 of the circles overlap. And I would say, as a birder, the sort of success to finding good birds is one, getting out there, but also kind of knowing the habitat you're in, this time of year, kind of where to look for what. And all those same tools apply, or skills apply, when you're hunting or fishing. So I've always maintained that the two groups are very, very similar. And I work very closely with, folks from Maine Audubon, the Nature Conservancy, Maine Coast Heritage Trust, as well as the Sportsman's Alliance of Maine, Maine Professional Guides, Maine Trapper Association. So I think the two really come together way more often than they're divided.
She's both a consumptive and a non-consumptive birder.
Absolutely.
She likes watching birds, identifying birds, but then she goes out in the fall and goes bird hunting.
We all do.
I don't mind eating them either.
No, to me, it's like I see a bacon double cheeseburger with wings flying whenever I see a grouse in my stuff.
We've gone bird hunting together. Did you go to Millinock at that time with us? Yeah. I think Tom Abello we had some we cooked a nice dinner that night.
Yeah.
Other members of the cabinet were included.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
consumptively.
Yeah. Well, we were trying to find a balance, right?
She also, let me just say, was it a year ago? We went out looking for the Stellar Sea Eagle, which is, I think, back in Maine, sort of commuting to Maine, a rare bird, huge eagle, apparently came from Russia, went through Canada, and ended up on the coast of Maine, and was seen by hundreds of people. We went out looking for it one cold day, and went out on a Marine Patrol boat with other cabinet members with us, equally curious, and she's the one looking through the telescope, kept saying, "Stop this boat."
Really?
And we pull up, set anchor and look. And she found the Stellar's eagle in a tree.
For us. I found it that day.
Your eagle eye identified the bird that caused so much commotion and brought birded tourists to Maine. And it was an incredible sight. First, sitting in the tree, I thought, okay, it looks like an eagle. It is an eagle. But when it took off, oh my God, the wingspan and the beautiful, it's got distinctive markings as how they identify it, as an individual. That was fun. And then in the fall, she traps those little saw-whet owls and tags them and stuff.
I have a question about that.
You go ahead, talk about saw-whet owls.
Let's talk about the saw-whet owls.
I participated in that too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for the audience, the saw-whet owl is a very small owl. Yeah. I think it's the smallest owl native to Maine. Am I right?
In Maine, yeah.
And Judy is a specialist in it. Tell us about the work that you've done, what you've learned. Yeah.
So as you said in my intro, I am a licensed bird bander. So I have been banding saw-whet owls for close to 25 years. In my backyard in the fall when they are migrating south. So, when I first started my career, people didn't realize that saw-whets migrated at all. And people started seeing them, sort of disproportionate numbers of them, kind of in the Cape May area. And people started thinking, geez, I wonder if these are not residents, if these birds have migrated south. And so, quickly people realized that the way to do that is to track individuals through banding. And we were one of the earlier banding stations to set up, and we started right in our backyard with just three mist nets, and we play an audio lure of the saw-whet breeding call.
She's an owl whisperer.
Yep.
So you get them to fly into a kind of an invisible net.
It's almost like it's like a giant hairnet. So it's like 10 feet high, 40 feet long,
and it works.
Yeah, they fly in and they fall into like a little hammock, and then we go out and check the nets like every half hour, and then every time there's a bird, we put it in a little bag, bring it back in the house, take all these sort of morphological or measurements on the bird, to age it and sex it. And
we had a bird banding party at our house one time, and these little things, oh my God, and they have 360-degree neck. They have no neck, basically. Their heads turn all the way around you, but they're so soft and pretty.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
How's the population doing?
It's great, stable, and the best thing about the the SAWA banning for me as being able to share it with other people.
Yeah.
And so we regularly have people over, as the governor indicated, and they are really so captivating and they're so adorable that, I think you really do a good job helping people to understand some of the biology of owls and just get them more connected to conservation. So I've done that for pretty much my whole adult life.
Really?
Yeah.
I understand you were interested in maybe getting into veterinary medicine, and then
you did some digging.
I always do. I apologize if you feel invaded, but the reason I invite the people on is I'm fascinated with the work they've done, and you definitely are someone who qualifies. So, tell us a little bit about your career and how you got to, I know you were in Audubon before that, after that.
Yeah. So I went to school initially for veterinary medicine, and I quickly realized it was animal behavior that was my passion and being outside. And so I switched over to wildlife biology. And as most people do, at least when I graduated, work a bunch of seasonal jobs, for several years and get experience. And then ultimately I landed at Maine Audubon for a full-time job there as their staff naturalist. And I kind of worked my way up the ladder there. I stayed there for about 11 years, and then I moved over to the state. When probably the only position in the state I would have left Audubon for was a regional biologist position in our gray office. So I worked there for 7 or so years, and then I came to Augusta and kind of gradually worked my way up the chain. And then I'd always wanted to be commissioner. I didn't, but I didn't know exactly how one got to be commissioner because it's, generally more of it is a political appointment, but it's not often that somebody with a professional background, is actually.
I don't think I've met you before I interviewed you. She's not somebody I knew politically or professionally at all.
No, and
how the hell that happened?
I think it makes her uniquely qualified for the job.
It does, really.
I think people that sometimes come from a political background. It's they don't have the perspective. I mean, Judy, you're a biologist,
right? Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said about the integrity of the work that you do, and you're always taking the scientific approach,
right,
not the political approach, not letting things influence your thinking about it. And I have a science degree as well, so we could talk about you for the whole time. But we want to talk to Janet too.
And she's got an excellent relationship with the committees of jurisdiction to the IF&W committee in the legislature, and they listen to her because she has that scientific background, professional background. So,
Janet, let's talk about your fly fishing.
Ooh.
How did you learn how to fly fish?
Let me think. I think in college I started fishing, and I had friends who fished, and then some of my high school classmates fished. Susie Pearson, Donna Bergman, Marie. Well, anyway, it ended up being sort of a girl weekend away kind of thing. Yeah. And we would go up to Parmacini and get the warden service to open the gate and things like that. And it was like camping, playing cards, drinking a little wine, and fly fishing.
Yeah.
And exploring different places in the Western Maine outdoors. I remember having some great trips to, we did Pierce Pond, we did Third Roach Pond, we did Kennebago, did, and my husband would go fishing now and then too. It's not as fun fishing with your husband, I got to say.
It depends on who your husband is.
Unless it's my husband.
Yeah. Well, your husband is an expert and brings the best equipment. He works for LOB.
Oh, okay.
But it's a good weekend away.
You enjoy it.
No internet, no TV, no phones.
No.
Yeah, just getting away, getting out and doing a little hiking. Wearing your boots and stuff, just kicking around, seeing the great outdoors.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And sometimes catching a fish.
Yeah. So we talked about saw-whet owls. That was one of my next questions for Judy. We just kind of segued right into that. Janet, let's talk a little bit about Maine guiding during COVID. It was interesting because something surprised me. My phone rang a lot. I still do. I still guide, although I work in another profession. My phone rang a lot from a lot of the people that I have been guiding in Maine over 20, 30 years that I hadn't heard from in a little while because they didn't have a choice. They really wanted to get out and do something. And being in the fresh air during COVID was imperative. Yeah. Everyone wanted to get out. And I would just say, your department did a great job with Maine Help's response page on the state CDC website. Many healthy Mainers went on guided trips to keep the guiding community alive. Can you speak? I mean, those were some difficult times. You were basically steering the ship. And I just wanted to say to you, from my observation point, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you, Mike. And we were pleased to be cited by the Commonwealth Fund, for instance, as one of the 2 best states in the country in terms of our healthcare response. The other one was Hawaii. All they had to do was close their airport, for crying out loud. We had a much bigger challenge. But anyway, and economically it was tough because the Canadian border was closed all that time and only recently fully reopened. So we didn't have the traffic coming in from Canada, which is vital to our economy too. But people did go outdoors. Maine, as you know, the state of Maine has 48 different campgrounds and monuments and whatnot. And so we took the time to use federal funds to improve those campgrounds and recreational areas that we support. And people came to Maine to be outdoors.
They did.
Campgrounds and state parks that you're familiar with, which never used to see many people there. You know, you go up to Rangeley, you'd see Rangeley State Park.
Right.
Now it's full. Lily Bay in Greenville, beautiful state park with sandy beaches, tall pines, beautiful views, mountain views. And you wouldn't see many people there in the past. And now they're filled up. And this year, when we opened up for reservations, man, the phone lines and the online reservations were full up immediately. So we welcome people. We're expanding them and improving them and making them very hospitable because it's the thing to do, thing to be. And it's one of the good reasons people come to Maine, enjoying clean air, clean water, hikes, mountains, streams, and lakes and ocean fronts. When you see pictures of Maine, you often see the lighthouses on the coast, which are beautiful. There are a lot of them. But there's also inland Maine, Baxter State Park, northern Maine, which is obviously famous for its snowmobile trails, wide open snowmobile ITS trails, things of that sort that people didn't maybe appreciate as much in the past as they do now. So yeah, they were all COVID eligible activities during COVID and since COVID.
You couldn't buy a fly rod. You couldn't buy a bicycle. The local retailers were running out of anything that was connected with getting connected to the outdoors.
The outdoors were still open.
And what's that again?
The outdoors were still
open. The outdoors was open. That was last year was the first year Sherry and I bought a state pass for Sebago Lake State Park.
Really?
Because it was the place to be. Yeah. Sebago Lake State Park. Have you ever been?
Yeah.
Oh, what a gem. I mean, it's just, 40 minutes from Portland and there's nobody there. Yeah. There is now, because of COVID.
And now people are coming to Maine, moving to Maine because they can do business here and enjoy the great outdoors. We've expanded broadband all across the state of Maine so you can work remotely. Right. And we're continuing to expand it so that every area of Maine is covered by good internet. So you can work remotely. We have good education system, good healthcare system, and that's all of that is attracting to make people to Maine as well. And they know they can enjoy the great outdoors and live a full life and raise a family here.
And we have a very clean environment. We do. Yeah. I want to just ask you a little bit of a challenging question. I know, Janet, I've watched you, through your professional career, your political career. You are a professional arguer. You're great at it. I mean, you can argue your way out of any situation. I've seen you do it many times before. But politicians and administrations are often met with cold handshakes in public settings. You might walk into a room, Judy, where half of the room looks at you like banana cream pie, and the other half looks at you like liver and onions. Yeah. How do you prepare yourself when you know you're going to walk into, as an example, the Bear referendum? Mm-hmm. That must have been kind of a sticky wicket.
Oh, and this woman is so lacking in self-confidence, honest to God. I mean, she's so shy. So the qualifications for the job is having chutzpah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think most of that just comes from, like with the Bear referendum, I wholeheartedly believed in our position. So I believed the position the department had was the right one. It was based on science. It was based on years of monitoring data and population data. And, I was confident that we were on the right path. And so that makes it a lot easier for me. So anytime I'm going someplace to talk about an issue or, whatever the case may be, I I guess at least I have the background and the science to kind of understand where the department is, why we're taking this position. And, I'm not always going to agree with everybody. But as long as people are respectful and professional and can hear you, and, there's always opportunity for conversation and kind of trying to meet in the middle. And that's the real balance and the art, I think, of making good policy, is trying to come up with programs that can meet our needs as biologists and wildlife managers, and also make sure that we're providing good opportunity for the constituents of the state. And I get to watch my boss, and she's the master, so I learn from her every time.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you have a question about how to manage something, you've got the board of directors.
Yeah, we have some thugs on our team who take care of those people that give you a hard time. No. And she's got a great marketing. She's done so much to increase the marketing of the IF&W department too.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, in my field is 80% men. And and it still is.
That's all.
There's only 4 other female directors in the country.
Wow.
And so anytime I go someplace, I am always the minority, and my background is more non-game. And so I do represent that. I bring that to the table. And that's often not, the approach that other directors might have to it. So I am pretty comfortable kind of pushing my vision and my agenda, because I believe in it.
And she's also a sportsman.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
In all ways, and they respect her for that too. She's not shy about picking up a rifle and going hunting, and
Right.
fishing, hunting, hiking, along with the birding.
Yeah. Well, change has never met with a warm handshake, and we've seen a lot of it just in my own lifetime living in Maine. All the different things with clear cutting, all those sort of things are really, really touchy topics. But in the end, we really still have a great place and whatnot. So, fly fishing. You two fly fish together a little bit, I understand?
But, I will share. So when I thought of this when the governor was speaking earlier, because you asked her the first time she went fly fishing.
Yeah.
And so I was a newly appointed commissioner. I hadn't really met the governor before she hired me. And she invited me to go away fly fishing, which I had never done.
Yeah.
So I went with her and 2 of her friends, Bruce.
Oh yeah, I went up to that rump pond.
Rump pond. Yeah, sure.
Bruce Barrel.
Yeah.
Up to his place.
And I never. I mean, I was so nervous. I'd never been fly fishing, and of course I want to impress my boss, right? You wanted to think.
Well, you're not going to impress anyone on your first day with a fly rod.
No,
but, we had a blast. It was so much fun.
We were way out in the middle of nowhere with these 2 people and having fun. And a knock came on the door. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was a couple of game wardens, and they said, "We have a message for the governor." I go, "Who could be bothering me on a fly fishing weekend?" And it was some press thing my press people needed an immediate response for. Oh my God. But the wardens were funny. They saw their boss and her boss and other people fly fishing.
I know.
So, but, to answer your earlier question about dealing with people who might be hostile, honest to God, I think Maine is too small a state to close any doors or to burn any bridges. And we learn that every day. I work with Republicans and Democrats and independents on things as varied as healthcare, education, and budgets and all that. And then this morning I went to a beautiful big breakfast for like 600 people, honoring Vietnam veterans up at the Civic Center. And I worked the tables and just said hi to everybody. I got a very warm response. Now, I know they didn't all vote for me last year. But finding common ground with people is what you have to do, and you almost always can, whatever the issue is.
I agree with that. So I do. The next question, Janet, is for you, and that I was blessed with the opportunity to take you and Stan on a drift boat trip years ago, partly because I owed you. You used to allow me to have access to the Sandy River, to drive down with my drift boat across the field and put in there. That was at that point really the best section to start, because above it there wasn't enough water. Below it, that's really what was holding a lot of the browns and whatnot. So you had a Volkswagen Westphalia and all the right gear, and we had a fun float in Solon on the Kennebec that day with Stan. And since you've been governor, have you been invited on some unique trips? Have you taken advantage of your? I mean, has someone called you up that you didn't expect to get a phone call from and say, "Why don't you come fishing with me?"
I would encourage that phone call and welcome it. If you know anybody who wants to take me fishing.
I think you went to Kennebago maybe a year or two
Went
ago.
to Kennebago, and I still have the VW 1985 Westphalia camper van.
Yeah.
It's in the garage of the Blaine house right now.
No
I put
kidding.
some money into it, new motor and stuff like that. And I got to get it. Last year was a campaign year. I didn't get out very much, to do some fun things like that, but I will this year. And still got a lot of gear I got to go through. But yeah, Kennebago, that wasn't guided really. It was just, Dick Spencer.
Dick Spencer was there,
yeah, he was good.
Yeah.
And we didn't go to Grant's Camp, but we met the folks from Grant's Camp, some of my friends.
We've been striper fishing.
Striper fishing on the Kennebec. That was guided, sure. A couple times. That was fun. And just to enjoy the Kennebec River.
Yeah.
People don't realize what an asset we have.
Gosh, yeah.
This is where Carl Yastrzemski fished every April, every spring, and others have fished. And the stripers are running pretty robustly these days. And we've caught some big fish on the Kennebec. I say we collectively.
Yeah.
I caught the fish of the day last time. Yes, I did.
She needed to help reeling it in. That was a big striper you caught.
I caught the fish of the day.
You did.
That last one, yeah.
Yeah.
Last trip.
Is it still alive?
Yep.
We put it back.
Of course.
It was June, I think, so we put it back.
Oh, that's right, yeah. I just want to share with you both a connection between guiding and land preservation. We were talking about Dick Spencer, we were talking about Kennebago, Parmigiani, and all that. I started guiding a guy 25 years ago who will go unnamed, and he had a lot to do with the pharmaceutical industry down in the Boston area. And he fell in love with Rangeley area.
Yeah.
And he involved with the Rangeley Lakes Heritage Trust just purchased Preserve Forever 3,600 acres of land.
Yeah.
If a Maine guide had not brought him to Rangeley one time, that never would have happened.
Right.
So the connection between guiding, tourism in general, and land preservation, it all kind of flows together. And it's just, I'm proud to say that was something that happened.
Yeah. Well, Ed Kafoury, his death last year was a loss, and he did so much working with Dick Spencer and the Rangeley Lakes Heritage folks to acquire more land in that area. And the Land for Maine's Future, of course, we budgeted in the general fund $40 million 2 years ago. And Judy,
and that's a great opportunity or example of where folks that are supporting sort of game and non-game came together and full force worked on that one together.
Easements and working waterfront and preserving land especially for deer wintering areas. That's in the statute now. It's one of the priorities.
Yeah, so, I think a great question that comes from that, Judy, is it was recently announced that you will be serving on the North American Wetlands Conservation Council. Do I have that right?
NACA, yep.
And you share with us the kind of initiatives you see for opportunities for Maine's future, kind of related to what we're talking about here.
Sure, yeah. So as you know, or maybe you don't, NACA is a granting entity. So significant grants up to $50 million a year nationally. And so I sit on that as one of the folks that sort of reviews and then approves the grants. I think in the past 5 or 6 years, over $14.5 million have come to Maine for land conservation, particularly around wetlands. And so, that's so critical for so many species of wildlife. It's the first time anyone from Maine's ever sat on that committee. And so sort of having a voice at the national table. I also am on the executive committee for the vice chair of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. Also the first time anyone from Maine has ever sat on the executive committee. So having a voice at the national table and being able to sort of push some of our agendas and our programs is really important. And I think even just the visibility it brings to Maine is phenomenal.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think we're at a good point to take a short break, and then we'll come back in the second half and talk a little bit more about some of the things that we are related to fly fishing with the governor and the commissioner.
Thank you.
This Flyline Flashback is about Baxter State Park. Percival Proctor Baxter was an American politician and philanthropist from Maine. He donated several pieces of land to the public domain, including Baxter Woods in Portland, Mackworth Island State Park in Falmouth, and Baxter State Park in Piscataquis County. Most of the land around Katahdin was originally owned by the Great Northern Paper Company. Following the Great Recession of 1929, the company agreed to sell 6,000 acres around the mountain for $25,000 in 1930 to Baxter personally. Baxter in turn deeded the land to the state with the provision that it shall forever be used for public park and recreational purposes, shall be forever left in the natural wild state, shall forever be kept as a sanctuary for wild beasts and birds, that no road or ways for motor vehicles shall hereafter ever be constructed thereon or therein. The park was established by 28 donations of land, in trust between the years of 1931 and 1962, eventually creating a park of over 200,000 acres in size. Baxter Park is not part of the Maine State Park system. Sole governance is provided by the Baxter State Park Authority, consisting of the Maine Attorney General, the Maine Commissioner of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, and the Director of the Maine Forest Service. Percival Baxter placed various restrictive covenants on the park so that today it is not actually part of the Department of Conservation, the body that administers the state's other parks. Rather, it is administered by the Baxter State Park Authority. In 1962, at the age of 87, Baxter donated his 28th deed. The park now comprises 314 square miles. Baxter left $7 million to maintain the park. He said, "Man is born to die. His works are short-lived. Buildings crumble, monuments decay, and wealth vanishes. But Katahdin, in all its glory, forever shall remain the mountain of the people of the state of Maine." Now, back to the second half of our interview. Welcome back to the second half of the podcast. I know, Judy, you'd like to talk a little bit about how COVID may have had a positive impact on people getting into the woods and hunting and fishing.
Yeah, so when I started as commissioner, nationally participation in hunting and fishing was on the decline. In some states, as much as 50%. We were on a much slower downward trajectory here in Maine. But one of my top goals as commissioner was to kind of reverse that trend, or at least stabilize it. And so, we went through a whole strategic plan and trying to create opportunities and remove barriers for participation and try and promote, particularly for me, it was important to promote women in these outdoor activities. And then, so we have this great plan. We have, as the governor mentioned, this phenomenal information and outreach program that are really good at marketing and targeting specific audiences. And then COVID hit. And so I like to say, good luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparedness, right? So we were prepared. COVID provided an opportunity, and we were really able to break down barriers and get more people outside in a safe, successful way. And since then, our downward trajectory has turned around and our license sales are up 10%. The number of women participating is up 30%. And so it's just awesome. Yeah. And I couldn't have in my full 8 years as commissioner, in my wildest dreams, I couldn't have anticipated this level of turnaround.
And is there an association of women sports like Chrissy Holmes' organization?
There's Maine Women of the Outdoors, Maine Women Hunters. There's a whole bunch of organizations that we work with.
Becoming an outdoor,
Becoming an outdoors woman.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been going for a little while, but it just seems like the momentum increases, and people like Bonnie Holden and
she's great.
Celine Dumaine, and they're just all waving the flag and they're making it. And even Emily Bastian, who runs the fly fishing department the fly fish and hunt department for LL Bean. She's a young up and coming woman in our industry as well. And so you mentioned earlier, Janet, that Judy likes to hunt. And you were just talking about women accessing hunting. Mm-hmm. You got into hunting as an adult.
I did.
What was the process like? I mean, you had to take a hunter safety course like everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it was honestly, and this is one of my biggest frustrations because it was a challenge. And so I was at the time wildlife director, and at every meeting I would go to, I would talk publicly about, I would love to learn to hunt, but it's not that easy. And I would put myself out there, and eventually George Smith, our governor, one of our good friends, was at a meeting, and he said, you're gonna come hunting with me. And so I went out with George, and he was really my initial mentor and person that connected me to the outdoors. And it was nothing like what I thought it was going to be. I was like, are you kidding me? This is the men have been hiding this from the women all these years.
That's right.
Because it is awesome. It is so opposite of what I thought. It was so relaxing, restorative, peaceful, to go out and just basically, we were deer hunting. So we would go and sit and listen and be quiet, and then would move and sit. And it was the most sort of transformative experience I'd ever had. And so from then on, I was hooked. And then once I went, I think more people realized I was actually serious about my request to learn how to hunt. More and more people started inviting me and taking me out. And now, with my husband, Jeff, we have 3 German short-hair pointers. We do a lot of, we'll hunt turkeys, we'll hunt deer. We do a lot of upland game hunting. 2 years ago, my stepson got a moose permit, so we went moose hunting. So, it's been such a transition.
You're turning into a hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
So
I love
Pat Kelleher, Commissioner of Marine Resources, too, is a big hunter. Yeah.
Outdoor, upland game hunter.
Great dogs.
So I can picture you hunting with George Smith in Mount Vernon.
On
his land when he was still alive.
Absolutely.
So George Smith was a very close friend of my father's. They worked, of course, they were selectmen in Mount Vernon. But George and I were about to come to fists down in one of the committee hallways years ago because we couldn't agree on how we were stocking fish in the state of Maine. And he wanted to privatize it. And I was behind there representing the guys in the department saying, no, we want to keep this as a state entity. And he looked right at me and he said, we can agree to disagree, but I think we should go hunting together.
Yeah.
And that, I think it was a month later, we
George.
were up at First Rose Pond area, driving around with my bird dogs. Yeah. And I was in love with George at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I love to tell that story because it really goes to show how much we do have in common.
Yeah.
For sure. And because he was not always the easiest person from my agency, we didn't always, see, I would visit him, and he would have a list of things he wanted me to do. And I would say, no, maybe, okay, we can do that,
We would take a lunch over to his house as he was fighting this illness that eventually took his life. And several times we'd go over to his house for lunch, and he, in charge, he was dictating to Judy, you got to do this about the ticks. You got to do this about the Yeti. And we'd go, and then Judy said, yeah, but George, here's the deal. And she'd give him the science. He'd go, well, okay, maybe you're right. He wrote so many wonderful books, too, about the outdoors in Maine and about restaurants in Maine, too. Just a great friend of all of ours.
Yeah, he did a lot with his retirement. When he after he left Sam, I mean, he was big on promoting the new Baxter Waterways. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with the name of it.
He invented the Land for Maine's Future, basically. He put that bill in years ago. Okay. That was his bill.
Yeah. And the Outdoor Heritage Fund.
Outdoor Heritage Fund, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
enormously impactful in the state.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Finding the funds to support our outdoor heritage, the legacy of the state of Maine.
Baxter Woods and Waters is what I'm trying to remember. He I think a lot of people didn't expect him to step up.
Katahdin Woods and Waters.
Thank you, Janet. I'm struggling. I haven't had enough coffee.
Yeah,
yet.
that was so controversial. I saw Matt Polstein yesterday.
Yeah.
There's another guy who's fought for that legacy.
Yes.
And over some opposition locally, but now they've come around. Yeah. They see that is an enormous asset to the town, to the towns, Patton, Millinocket, East Millinocket. And they welcome the business.
For the listening audience, Matt Polstein owns a outfitting business up in
New England Outdoors.
Millinocket, New England Outdoor Center. That's exactly right. And Matt Polstein and I went to college together.
Did you?
We both went to Hampshire College in Amherst for a while. So
didn't he date Abby Holman for a while in college?
Him or I?
He. Did you?
Oh, he could have dated Abby Holman. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know that.
We did a talk show together. He and Abby and I.
Yeah.
Abby's gone now. Yeah. 20 years. But
that's how my father got into the legislature.
That's right, too. That's right, too.
Yeah.
His father took Abby's place after she died. Long story. Okay.
And something just...
And then his mother took his father's place after he died. So
wow.
I'll tell that story real quick. I just want to say... I want to say one thing, Janet, really quickly. You mentioned about going to George's house and bringing lunch for him in his last days. You did the same for my father. You came to our house.
I didn't bring lunch, but I did come over.
Yeah, you did bring lunch, actually. I remember it. And that was touching because it allowed us to not have to leave his side in the last few days, and it really meant a lot to our family. So my father passes away not long after that, and we're at the house for 2 hours, and you could hear a pin drop because we're just devastated.
Cool.
And the phone rings. could I speak with Pat Jones? Male voice. I said, it's really a bad time. This is John Baldacci.
Yeah.
So John called, yes, Mr. Baldacci, Governor Baldacci, I'll put her right on. So he gets her on the phone, he passes his condolences, and he says to her, what does he say to her?
You better run.
You better run for your husband's seat. To which she did, and to which she won.
Wow.
And
what a story.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So yeah, it's just, it's a great,
we campaigned together. I campaigned with his father, and I campaigned with his mother.
But, the power that your office and your position brings, Janet, that's the point. That's the larger point, is that you have the ability to affect change, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks for saying so.
Yeah. Janet, tell me about Judy Camuso as a person.
Can she leave the room first? Because, Judy is fun. She's hardworking. I hate to use all these superlatives, but it's true. She's, as I said, I had never met her, I don't think, until I interviewed her for the job. This committee had sifted through hundreds of resumes for different cabinet positions. And it ended up, of the 15 cabinet positions, 9 of them are women. And several of them I had never known before, but I interviewed her and I said, this is the person for the job. She's out front. What she says, what she means what she says. And she knows her stuff. If it's something she doesn't know, she'll study it and learn about it and be an expert in no time. So, and she had, when she went to the committee, we nominated her. There were obviously other people who wanted the job, but she seemed to be the most qualified. And I never regretted it for a moment. The people in the legislature listened to her. She has credibility because she knows her stuff. She's honest and experienced. And so, of course, I know her as a sport now, and fishing the Kennebec and the Kennebago and everything in between. Ice fishing, that's always a challenge. We go out in February, always the coldest day of the year.
Don't do it.
Why is that? But she and her husband bring the pop-up shacks and little burners and barbecue, maybe some fire. What do they call it? Fireball nips. Just do warm you up. And bait the traps and everything's fun. And we jig, and the Chief Justice was with us last month. Yeah. And Chief Justice and I sat there. We looked like the cremation of Dan McGee and one of those pop-ups. We're jigging at different ice holes, and after an hour, so I said, well, I think I got to get out of here, so we leave, and there's a flag up. We both run to the flag, run to the trap, and I go, oh, you take it. It's probably some little chub or something. Yeah. She pulls in the biggest bass of the day, not Judy, the Chief Justice of the Maine Supreme Court, who's fishing with us that day.
Oh, and this is...
I let her have the biggest fish of the day. Valerie Stanfield.
I know her well, yeah.
Yeah, she's a good, Mount Vernon area. Yeah. So she loves to fish too. Yeah. So
she's a kayaker. She's a fly fisherman. Her husband John from before, and I guided together for years. So I spent a lot of time with Valerie when she was just a lawyer, and then naturally she escalated to the position that she deserves.
She still likes to fish. Yeah. So any guys who want to invite all of us, welcome the opportunity.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So great, that's wonderful. And Judy, if you wouldn't mind, tell me who's Janet Mills to you?
Governor Mills. Well, she's my boss, so.
Good first response.
I mean, I think Governor Mills is probably the most intelligent person I know. She's articulate, and she can talk about and she knows everybody, and she can talk about anything, any subject matter, with just such fluency. And I'm like mouth open, and I just try not to say too much so I don't embarrass myself. But she's also super fun, down to earth, the most comfortable, easy person to be around. And, she talks about going to George's, and this was shortly after I was confirmed, so I still didn't know her that well. But we would go to George's for lunch, and she wouldn't just bring lunch, but she would go and then she would set it up, and then she was the first, female governor, and she's doing the dishes. Yeah. She's clearing the table.
I felt bad for Linda and George.
Like, she's so down to earth, and she's like a real person. And
that honestly, is not a standing invitation to invite me to dinner so I can do the dishes.
I think think that's why people love her so much, you know, and she inspires hope. I think that's, you know, there's a sign in the office here that says hopeful, but I think more than anything, people are going to remember Governor Mills because she inspired hope in a very difficult, dark time for the state. She was hopeful, optimistic, positive, and she gave everybody something to hold on to.
She just got a raise.
That's the truth.
No, I mean, during the pandemic, it was scary times, and I was glad that you were protecting me, you were protecting Sherry, you were protecting my mom by setting up some of the guidelines that you did, and other governors were not taking that same step because they were bending to the pressure.
Yep.
But that's kind of a so. Judy, just to go back to you one last time, what do you want your legacy to be as a commissioner when you leave? So, how do you want people to remember the work you've done?
I guess I would like people to remember me as somebody that did good conservation, right? But mostly, I want people to see my agency as a place where they fit and they belong and they're welcomed. So, you know, the outdoors are for everybody. I say this all the time. The outdoors are for everyone. It doesn't matter your race, your sex, your gender, your identity. The outdoors are for everybody. And I want my agency to be the agency that people come, regardless of their background, their demographics, their financial situations. Like, I want everybody to feel welcome and included, and like they have a space with us in the outdoors.
Sounds good.
I personally believe the more people, and I say this all the time, but the more people that care about the outdoors and the fish and wildlife of the state. That's my personal why. I want more people to care about fish and wildlife, because once people care about them, they'll work to protect them. So I want as many people as possible outside, connecting with nature and, you know, becoming passionate about our fish and wildlife and our natural resources, because I want all those people then to work to protect them.
I can tell you through my lifetime that I've seen the image of the department transform. The wardens were not always the most professional people to deal with, and they are now.
Yeah.
I think you can see that through Northwoods Law.
Yeah.
That was a great program.
Yeah.
I mean, we went to Pennsylvania to go get a new dog, and people were saying, "Oh, you're from Maine,"
Really?
and they all want to talk about that.
Yeah.
And then all the sporting shows that you guys do, and the outreach that you're doing, and the wardens getting into classrooms. Those are meaningful things, and getting people that are professional. You know, letting someone have a warning instead of a violation, instead of saying, "Hey, I got you." It's like, "Hey, let me show you."
Yeah.
Excuse me. There's another thing that your department's doing, Judy, and we'll finish up in a minute, that is really cool. And that is, I know on your website you have an interactive map of Maine now, where you can zoom in on a pond and you can touch it, and it'll tell you what the limits and the regulations are.
Oh, that's fantastic. I've needed that for years.
Well, it's helpful in a lot of ways.
It is.
So I'm wondering if you put that into an app, just to carry that back to the nest.
You may have gotten a survey from us in the past day or two, because we are looking to develop an app that will allow folks to both go online, buy their hunting license, buy their fishing license, look at the fishing regulations for a particular water body that they're on, that they want to hunt or fish on.
It's so complicated.
But we're still in the beginning phases, and right now we're surveying our public to see what are the most important things that they would want to see in an app. So we'll use that and work with our Inform Me to help develop that app. And we're hoping to have something to launch within the next year.
I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
it's great.
And it would be work great, because imagine if you're a warden and you want to say, well, this is where you think you are, but you're actually here. Right. And so it's for an outreach perspective, I think it's an invaluable tool. Yeah. Janet, what would you like the people of the state of Maine to be the takeaway from your legacy?
Well, I'm not ready for a legacy yet. I mean, I got 3.5 more years on this term. So,
you still have some work
to do. Thanks for the question. I think, look, my first term was kind of marked by the first year was a lot of hope, a lot of initiatives, Medicaid expansion, fully funding IF&W and things of that sort, and fully funding education a couple of years ago, things of that sort. But, and then COVID hit. And then, COVID marked my first term in office. Second term in office, I am not sure what the highlights or lowlights are going to be, but I hope that my legacy will be to make sure that Maine is known as a welcoming state, and that Maine is full of hope and compassion, and respect for other people and respect for the outdoors. I try to live by example when I go fishing, not just for myself, but to show that, hey, look, you too can be there. You too can do it. We don't take a TV camera when I fish because that would have unintended consequences. But
I love
it. Bad cast.
No,
But, no, I think Maine has been uplifting to me. I was born and raised here, and I think it is becoming more uplifting and inspiring to other people as well. We have 4 really robust seasons, as you're very familiar with. And we now have one of the highest in-migration rates in the country, and the highest in-migration rate in New England. So I want to make sure we remain welcoming and supportive of people coming here from other states and other countries, but also that we avoid sprawl, that we're working on housing and transportation, healthcare issues. But I want us to be a forward-looking state that doesn't lose track of its roots.
Excellent.
And values.
That's a great answer, Janet. And I just want to take the opportunity as an ambassador of fly fishing in Maine to thank you both for joining us today. It's great to have you on the Fly Line podcast.
Thank you. And I know you've talked about Fly Rod Crosby in the past and other podcasts, but this is a woman who,
please.
120 something years, 130 years ago, was the first registered guide, not just the first woman guide, the first registered guide in the state of Maine. And we're honoring her now. There's a statue somebody up in Franklin County made, and
she would have been a constituent of yours.
She would have been a constituent, yes. And of course, she was also very stylish. And she brought Teddy Roosevelt to Western Maine. She guided some really incredible history makers as well as regular people. But her history it's a living history every day in the state of Maine. We like to honor people like that. And then, of course, Carrie Stevens from Rangeley area who tied flies, invented the gray ghost streamer, I think, and other flies. So we have a history of women in the outdoors in Maine. And Maine is more than just lighthouses. Maine is a lot more than lighthouses, although we love them too. So much to explore. So we welcome all comers.
Thank you, Janet. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for joining us for this intimate discussion, and thank you for listening to Flyline Podcast. A new Flyline Podcast episode will be released every 2 weeks on Tuesdays, so be sure to come back to meet our next famous guest. Until then, this is Michael Jones. Flyline Podcast is a product of Riverside FM.